In that case, if you leave your ex-spouse as the beneficiary of your accounts and something happens to you, it's a very awkward conversation for us to have.
That could really put you in a pickle in terms of tax time because you got hit with a huge lump sum of money that could bring you into the next tax bracket.
You want to pay more in taxes than you need to. And by controlling the distributions via a smart designation, and the beneficiary designation would then pass to an inherited IRA, where now you can spread that tax liability out over 10 years.
Welcome to the podcast Retirement Done Right. Hosted by David Rath and Pat Kalish, we tackle various topics such as retirement, Social Security, taxes, estate planning, wealth planning, and more. If you have further questions or want to learn more, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at contwealth.com. Please note that the information discussed on this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. Listeners should not act upon the information or content without first seeking the advice of a licensed financial professional.
Welcome back to our podcast series here at Continuum Wealth Advisors. I am David Rath, the Chief Investment Officer here at Continuum. I am happy to welcome the newest member of our team, Pat Kalish. Pat, why don't you tell people about yourself?
Awesome. Thanks, David. Super excited to be here. Like David said, my name is Pat Kalish. I'm the newest member of the Continuum Wealth team. A little bit about my background. So prior to Continuum, I actually spent close to a decade at Vanguard. And at Vanguard, I was a financial advisor. I also helped consult with outside financial advisors on Vanguard's products and services. But I'll tell you, my passion was financial planning, and I came across Continuum, and it was a great fit. So really my role here, it's to expound upon like the strong investment management foundation that we already have going and introducing some more comprehensive financial planning strategies. So really look forward to working with you all and excited to be here.
And Pat hails from the great state of Pennsylvania, and he's going to be moving up to our area. So if you are in town, probably in the April to May timeframe or beyond, come say hi to Pat. He's going to be a permanent fixture in the office, and you're bringing your wife with you, right?
I am. Though I will say we got 2 inches of snow last night. So I think that was a good preparation to move up to the Saratoga area, but we're very excited. So the plan is to sell our current home, be up there full time come May. And when Alyssa and I, that's my wife, we met the team, we also fell in love with the area. And we've only seen the area during the winter and fall months. So I think there's a definite treat coming our way during the spring and summer months.
Track season up here is a different animal. So it's a good animal though, if you like that type of thing. But we're going to get into our topic of conversation today, which is the top 4 mistakes that people make when choosing the titling on their accounts. And that is a mouthful to say, but it's an extremely important thing to talk about because the titling is going to matter as your assets, as your investment accounts pass to somebody else upon your passing. And so let's lead it off and talk about the number one thing that people make a mistake when they are titling their assets. And that's not having a systematic plan, or at least any plan, of checking the beneficiary designations on your accounts, right?
Yeah. I'm glad we're starting here, David, because, I think the foundation to a good, strong estate plan is making sure your accounts are titled appropriately. And there's a lot of reasons behind it, but one of the key reasons, right, is that typically when you set up beneficiary designations on your accounts, those designations supersede your will or say your trust. So having these in line is very important. And the first thing that I think I'd love to bring up is just the importance of regular reviews, right? So beneficiary designations, they typically get set up and then they're forgotten, right? So life changes, right? Marriages, divorces, deaths in the family, new children in the family. So I think having periodic reviews to really ensure that your beneficiary designations are appropriate is like the key to success. And I think one of the ways you can do that is to set up an annual or even a biannual review to go through all of your designations, and ensure that they're set up. At Continuum, I love the way we do it. So during each of our annual review meetings, we have kind of one kind of, sheet that lists out all of the beneficiary designations. And we make sure we go through that because it's so important, but don't overlook it. Always kind of look through these designations and ensure that they're set up appropriately.
I would say the worst case scenario where you're not updating your beneficiary designations is if you get divorced and remarried. And fortunately, it doesn't happen that frequently. But in that case, if you leave your ex-spouse as the beneficiary of your accounts and something happens to you, it's a very awkward conversation for us to have with your current spouse who is watching those assets pass to another person that your spouse was formerly married to.
Yeah. That's such a good point. And I mean, we've seen that across the industry. And there's enough just anxiety and angst that happens during the death of a loved one that like really just want to make sure that your estate plan is set up for success because that will just, I think, help your family in the long run.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I will reference this so many times where it is a stressful enough time for you,
Yeah.
your family members when you pass away. There's no reason to add to that stress. So if you can do things during your life that takes at least some of the burden off of them and settling your financial affairs during that time is a very stressful endeavor. And if you can do things that make things clear and eliminate the angst that is going to arise from these types of situations, the better off that the people who you love are going to have during that time period.
100%. Control what you can control.
Yeah. So number two, using the titling of a joint account on a taxable investment account or a taxable or a bank account where you don't necessarily need to use that joint with rights of the survivorship titling, correct?
Correct. We see this a lot. So with joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, right? Keep in mind the assets automatically pass, right, to the surviving owner and it, bypasses probate. I think why we're bringing it up is we see this account title a lot, right? And a lot of times it seems like more of like a blanket account title, but there's a lot of implications there. If you set this up, right, you might inadvertently disinherit other intended heirs, right, for your assets. There's also liability risks to this, right? So if any joint owner faces financial issues, those assets might be on the line, right? So I think it's really important to really understand what your intentions are for those assets and not just jump into a joint tenants with rights of survivorship type of account. One option that you have, right, where you could kind of maintain sole ownership of those accounts is maybe a transfer on death account, right, where you're maintaining sole ownership of those assets, but then you can designate a beneficiary that's going to inherit those assets. And that type of account also avoids probate.
And I think you see this a lot with multi-generational relationships where maybe it's a father and son or a grandmother and a granddaughter just
Yep.
working on an account or having an account shared between them for the purpose of, you said, maybe it is to pass that money along to that person, but maybe it's to just help with the maintenance and the upkeep of the account and the monitoring and just putting them on there is not necessarily the optimal reason for doing that. As you said, there's other things that you can do. They might even consider like power of attorney if it is an elderly person who just wants some help with their bank account. They don't have to make it a joint account. They can do it in such a way that they can still pass the money as they'd like, but then have some help during their lifetime.
Right. That's such a good point. Durable powers of attorneys, financial directives, those are other legal documents that you can draft in order to get a little bit of help if you're going to need it within your financial life.
So we're through two, coming down the back stretch here for the mistakes that people are making. We don't want to beat people up here, right?
Yeah.
Because this is stuff that is common, and if you're not living and breathing what we do, it's easy to make a mistake that can have very wide-ranging implications. So we want to just point this out, and obviously through conversations that you would have with us and the team, you can start to align your money with what your desires are. And that's the whole purpose of
Yeah.
all these types of conversations is to make sure that what your desires are going to be executed upon your passing. So number three is This is more, I would say, for the intended recipient of the investments. And this is making a mistake with regards to naming a trust as a beneficiary of a retirement asset. Can you explain why somebody, first of all, would they do that? And then what are some of the challenges when it comes to the people actually inheriting the money?
I think to start off, I'd want to say revocable living trust, right? Where the grantor creates a trust, they still have ownership of those assets. They're able to change the trust terms as life changes. That's a great legal vehicle to set up for estate planning purposes, right? They're very efficient. So assets within that trust, right? They bypass probate. You have privacy, right? So unlike wills that go through the probate process, that's a public event. So you can actually pull those wills and public records. And there's a reduced, I would say, potential for disputes. Right? Have the trust set up. It's very clear you set that up with an attorney. With that said, I think the pitfall that you bring up is putting IRAs, right, potentially into the trust. There's ways that you can do that creatively, but what happens is when clients put an IRA into a trust, right? Remember, there's going to be a successor trustee that's going to be able to manage that trust and make sure that that's distributed appropriately. And they may distribute that IRA to the beneficiary, right, within that account, and they might take a lump sum distribution when you might have had the opportunity to stretch out those distributions, right? So that could really put you in a pickle in terms of tax time because you got hit with a huge lump sum of money that could bring you into the next tax bracket. So I'd say like revocable trust, right? There's many ways that you can frame them. I think it's a great estate planning tactic, but really being aware of what you're putting into that trust is very important. And keep in mind, right? That's why beneficiary designations that we touched on at the beginning are also very important because those beneficiary designations, they supersede the will or the trust. And that's a way to get your assets to your heirs.
It's efficient tax planning for your heirs. And
Mhm.
we just saw this recently. And unfortunately, somebody received that distribution from the trust in one tax year. And as you said, there is that we're contrasting that against inheriting an IRA where you have 10 years to distribute the money versus getting it all in 1 year. I like to joke, I've heard it somewhere else, so I'm gonna steal it, is you always wanna make sure that you're paying Uncle Sam. You never wanna make it you never wanna leave a tip. You don't wanna pay more in taxes than you need to, and by controlling the distributions via a smart designation, and the beneficiary designation would then pass to an inherited IRA, where now you can spread that tax liability out over 10 years, so you're not getting killed on taxes in 1 year. That's gonna be incredibly important too to your beneficiaries as they receive that money from you.
100%. Sure.
All right, so we're on to our last point, and I think this is just an overarching theme, and that is a misalignment between
Yep.
beneficiary designations, wills, trusts, anything else that you've put in place, because there is a hierarchy of where the people that are settling your estate, where they're going to look first and what they're legally obligated to do. So talk us through what the misalignment can look like, and then also what are some steps that they can take to fix this?
Yeah, so it's a good point, and like you brought up, left is tough enough, right? So you wanna make this as easy as a process for your family and your heirs. What we see is that if you have misalignments between your wills, your trust accounts, your beneficiary designations, that could lead to legal disputes, right? It could lead to probate complications, right? And just unintended asset distribution, right? And you've worked hard and you wanna ensure that your assets pass appropriately, and if there's some misalignment, right, that could play out in a way that you didn't completely intend. So I think what's important to remember, I brought this up a few times, but I'll stress it again. Beneficiary designations, right? They typically override wills. So these documents, like, they must be in harmony. And it's easy to go in and change up your beneficiary designations. You could typically do that online. You can give us a call, right? It might be a little bit more difficult to update a will. But with that said, right, as you're making these changes, make sure you go back through all of your estate planning documents to ensure that there's alignment. And that's why I'll go back to like reviewing this on an annual or a biannual review is so important. But when you are reviewing these designations, pull out all of your estate documents to ensure that there's alignment. Some of the best estate planning documents that I've seen have a summary sheet, right? Where it has all of your documents, all of your beneficiary designations on one page so that you can see exactly how your assets are going to flow to your heirs. And I think that is just a great way to stay organized and to ensure that there's alignment across all different estate planning documents.
I'm glad you brought that up, the flow chart, because through our partnership with wealth.com, there is a visualizer tool where you can very helpfully see how things will flow. Because I don't know about you guys, but as I'm reading any sort of legalese, I become cross-eyed and I don't understand what I'm reading, or I have a very hard time visualizing it. And so if you have something that is as valuable as your estate and you want to make sure that using nice pictures that you can see where the stuff is going, we have that optionality, or we have that tool available to people. If you want to see a visualization of your estate, we can help create that for you, so that, again, to ease the burden, somebody can easily look at that document and see this is how it's supposed to go. We want to make sure everything is in alignment, everything's good to go. It makes your heirs, it makes their life a lot easier.
100%. I think another benefit to that, and like you bring up wealth.com, is having all your documents in one place, right? Because these estate plans can get pretty complex. And when you pull out maybe some trust documents, that's a pretty thick pad of paper there, right? But ensuring that all of those documents are in one place and that your executor knows exactly where those documents are, right? That is just going to make that process so much easier. So again, prepare and control what you can, right? So that when that time comes, there's less family tension.
Well, this was really helpful, honestly, for me. I learned things during a conversation today. So I appreciate you jumping on the podcast here. We're going to be doing a lot of these moving forward. So we're very happy to have Pat as a member of our team. If you haven't already, introduce yourself, shoot him an email, give him a call. He likes to talk to people. So you'll be seeing a lot of him in the future. And anything else before we end this, Pat?
I'm super excited to be here. And any financial planning questions that the clients have, please reach out. What I'm really looking to do and what I'm excited to do is to just try and create some alignment within your financial plan, right? So look through things like retirement planning, insurance, estates, tax planning, and ensure that that's extremely clear and all in one place, right? So that we have a really good plan for whatever life throws our way. So very excited to dive in. And if any questions come up, I'm a call or an email away.
It's a great way to end it. Thanks again, Pat. We look forward to doing a lot of these in the future. Take care, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, David.